Hello, my name is Mico Romao and I'm a cutlery expert. Today we're going to be breaking down some movie scenes involving cutlery. Let's get started. First up, law-abiding citizen.
Can I have some silverware, gentlemen?
You get a spork. Idiot.
So we see that he's handed a spork. These are actually really commonly used in jails. And one thing about these kind of sporks is they're actually one of the better designed sporks. The ones I really don't like are the sporks where the spoon is at one end and the fork is at another. So you always have to be holding either the spoon or the fork when you're using it. So you are going to compromise on the fork a little bit because the tines are shorter. But overall, I think that is one of the better designs for a spork. Next up, the Titanic.
Start from the outside and work your way in.
That is correct. You're going to start from the outside and you're going to work your way in, because each course you're going to need a different set of flatware for it. So the first course that they're going to be having is caviar. As you can see by this interesting looking spoon here, it's actually made of mother of pearl. So it actually isn't as confusing as it seems. I had the privilege to work on set of the Titanic, and interesting fact, all the flatware used in the movies was made by the exact same company that made the original flatware for the Titanic in 1912. That is amazing attention to detail that just isn't there in most movies. Next, we have the movie Burnt. Seeing him using a metal fork on a non-stick pan like that really gets to me. You really shouldn't be using anything metal on a non-stick pan. There are some more durable non-stick coatings that you can use metal utensils with, but for the longevity of your pan, it's just better not to. Next, we're going to be looking at Four Brothers. Their posture while they're eating is really terrible. They're all hunched over. There was a scientific study conducted that showed that if you ate hunched over, your digestion wouldn't work as well compared to sitting upright and eating that way. Obviously, this movie is using it for effect, but just in your day-to-day life, try to make sure when you're eating upright. Other than that interesting drink choice of milk and beer, the other thing that confuses me about this scene is why only one of them is using a knife to eat with their meal. They're eating a turkey dinner, they have lots of other food. I'm surprised they're just using forks. I would expect more of them to be using knives, so I don't think that this scene is super realistic. Next up, Pirates of the Caribbean. I love this scene. This is one of my favorite movie scenes. It just really shows you how deadly cutlery can be. The only thing unrealistic about this scene is that a fork traveling at that speed wouldn't have just stuck in his wooden eye. It would have gone all the way through his skull. And he would have died, but also wouldn't have died because he was still a cursed pirate at that point. So he would have been all right, but it is a funny gag, him pulling on the fork and it taking out his eye as well. So because of that, I will let them off, you know. It's a funny scene. This is actually possible to do with table knives. A lot of people think, oh, they're pretty blunt, but if you use enough force, you can easily stab into somebody with them. A few years ago, there was this really bad incident where a guy was unloading his dishwasher and he fell over and his hand landed on an upright table knife and it went all the way through his hand. That sounds super painful, so pretty bad situation. So it just goes to show that you can really cause a lot of harm with table knives. Next up, Inside Out.
So, as it turns out, the green trash can is not recycling. It's for greens, like compost and eggshells.
As you can see, they're eating Chinese takeout, and it appears that the daughter and the dad are both using forks. So ideally, you'd want to be using chopsticks in this scenario, but you can understand that, younger kids often, find it hard to use chopsticks. They often will use forks, so that is quite accurate, but just the dad there, he should know better. He should be able to use chopsticks, so I don't really know what's going on with him. Next we have Django Unchained.
His approval would be a dubious proposition at best.
Soft-hearted Frenchie.
So as we can see, Leonardo DiCaprio's character in this is eating some cake. and he's using the correct type of fork to eat cake with. This type of fork is called a dessert fork. A dessert fork has thicker tines on the outside and thinner tines on the inside. This helps the fork cut through pastries and other desserts, and is also why this fork is also known as a pastry fork. There once was a wealthy English lord, and he insisted on using a different type of fork for every dessert. If he was having vanilla cake, he'd have a different one for chocolate cake. Pastries would be different. Trifle, different. Every type of dessert he had to have a different type of fork. And they were very decorative and ornate. And in total, he had 27 of them, each one to be used with its corresponding dessert. Next we have Hot Fuzz.
What's the situation? Two blokes and a load of cutlery. What do you reckon?
This is actually quite accurate. Butchers use a ton of knives. The average deli in a grocery store contains 400 knives. Meet the Robinsons.
Dinner is served.
Hooray, Italian food.
A lot of people don't realize this, but spaghetti forks do exist. They're not traditional, however, they have ridged tines, so that way when you are twisting up the spaghetti, it stays on your fork, which I think is really interesting. I like to see how cutlery evolves over time. Next up, Beauty and the Beast.
No one's gloomy or complaining while the flatware's entertaining. We tell jokes.
This is just completely unrealistic. Flatware does not act like that. It cannot move by itself. It is an inanimate object, and there's no reason it should be portrayed in this way. I completely disagree with the way that it is used in this movie. I don't understand it. It really doesn't make any sense. I don't know what they were thinking in this movie. I've watched this movie 3 times, and whenever I get to this part, I just can't finish the movie. I have to turn it off because it's just so distracting and just so out of the ordinary. Like, I don't know. I don't know what else to say, really. If I had to rate the scene, I'd give it a 2 out of 10. The flatware seems period appropriate and is quite fancy and nice to look at, but just apart from that, it does not dance around. What was the director thinking when he made this part of the movie? This has been Cutlery Expert breaks down cutlery scenes in movies. If you did enjoy it, please give it a like and please subscribe. Don't forget to comment any of your cutlery questions down below. A lot of people don't realize this, but spaghetti forks do exist. They're not traditional, but they have ridged tines, so they help the spaghetti stay on your fork as you're twisting it up. I messed it up. A lot of people don't realize this, but